Hello again, garden friends. Welcome back to a very hot, sunny summer day in the garden. I've been out here 5 minutes. I'm already sweating a ton, but that's okay. Today I have a full tour of my raised bed garden. I'll be showing you what I'm currently growing, what is finishing up and ready to be harvested, and what I've just planted. I'll also be showing you what's going great, what's not going so great, and everything in between. So let's get started. Also, I apologize for the background noises. I'm in a neighborhood and there's lots of lawnmowers around today. This is my raised bed garden. I currently have 14 raised beds. I have one in-ground bed. I also grow in several grow bags and containers in this area as well. This first bed is my only in-ground bed, and this year I'm mainly growing tomatoes and basil in it. I do also have some companion plants as well. On this end, I have several of my favorite companion plants to plant between my vegetables. First are dwarf cosmos. These are beautiful and they are great at attracting pollinators and beneficial insects. This sprawling sort of plant is called a ground cherry. It's in the nightshade family, and it's called a ground cherry because it will drop the ripe fruit all over the ground. The fruit grows in a husk, really similar to a tomatillo, but the taste is sort of wild to me, kind of like a cross between a cherry tomato and a pineapple, but it's really good. And these plants make tons of fruit. But the reason they're one of my favorite trap crops is because they are great at attracting flea beetles. That's where all this damage is coming from, but they are vigorous growers. They don't mind. So if you have an issue with flea beetles in your garden, try planting these. The first of the tomatoes I have growing in this bed are called Orange Jazz. These are beautiful tomatoes. They definitely live up to their name, and they kind of have a hint of peach to them, but still a really good slicing variety. These are a hybrid, so they do pretty well when it comes to disease, but you can see the rabbits have really been getting into these this year. This is the first. They usually leave my tomatoes alone. The next variety are called Red Deuce. This is a determinate tomato. It was recommended to me by a fellow master gardener, and it's a pretty classic kind of red slicing variety. I haven't had any ripen up yet, but they have been really good at producing so far. I have some San Marzanos growing. These are great for canning and for making sauces. These are kind of a tried and true variety for me. I grow these every single year. I think I have 2, maybe 3 of these plants going. This tomato was a new to me variety this year. It's called Phil's 1, and it's a determinate. I planted it for the novelty of it. I don't think I'll grow it again for several reasons. One, it's just a really kind of spindly tomato. It puts out these tiny little branches everywhere. They're really, really hard to stake up. The unique shape is what made me decide to grow it this year. It's almost like a fused cherry or grape tomato. You can pull off these little sections individually and eat them. But honestly, they've been really prone to blossom end rot, and the taste for me isn't all that great. So it was fun to try it out. Probably won't grow it again. And in between my tomatoes, I always grow basil. Basil and tomatoes grow so well together. The basil is thought to help repel hornworms a little bit, which may be true because I haven't had any in this bed yet. I have 4 different types of basil growing in this bed: Genovese, Italian, sweet basil, and then down on the end, I'm actually growing an ornamental basil. It's really pretty. It's a great filler for floral arrangements, but they get these really beautiful, let me see if you can see it in this light, these really beautiful kind of maroon rosettes. I also planted some honeydew to vine along the bottom of this bed. Unfortunately, it's just not doing great. Cucumber beetles and squash bugs, more so the cucumber beetles, have been a huge problem for me the last several years. Not only for the chewing damage that they cause, but they will also spread something called bacterial wilt, and that's probably what this one has. And once these plants get it, it's pretty much done. So my cucumbers and most of the melons that I've grown have been affected the last few years, which is such a shame because they're some of my favorite things to grow and to eat. I only use organic sprays in my garden, and honestly, I rarely even use those, especially in the summer when so much is flowering, because there really isn't an organic spray I can use that won't also affect beneficial insects. So I've just been researching resistant varieties. I've been looking at different kinds of companion planting, and hopefully I can get some cucumbers and melons growing in the garden again soon. This is one of 2 metal raised beds from Garden in Minutes that I have. I absolutely love these beds. They're great for beginners, so if you're looking for a beginner-friendly setup, this is a great way to go. The metal raised beds are long-lasting, and my favorite part are the watering grids. They really evenly water the entire width of the garden, and you can actually get these grids separate to go on existing raised beds as well. I do have a discount code, so I'll link that and my link below. This is sort of a bed in transition right now. I just pulled a huge cantaloupe out of it. I am also growing these cucamelons, also called mouse melons. Right now they're just kind of sprawling everywhere. The original plan was to grow them up this fence line, but the posts were just a little bit too thick. But let me show you how cute the fruit is on these. This is the tiny little fruit. It looks like a little miniature watermelon. They will get a little bit bigger. I've honestly never tasted these before. I've heard very mixed opinions on if people like them or not. I am excited to try them. I also have some parade bunching onions that I planted this spring on either end. They're still growing really well and will probably continue to do so in the fall. And this is a volunteer tomato. No idea what kind. I'm pretty sure it's not a kind of like cherry or grape tomato, just the way the blossoms and the fruit are forming. But I'm excited to see what it is. I always love garden surprises. In this bed, I mostly have peppers growing, although I do have more of those dwarf cosmos here, and I have a taller variety of cosmos planted in the back. This first one is a Sugar Rush peach pepper, and this pepper is actually going into its third garden season. It's one that I've dug up and overwintered inside the house and then replanted twice now. And it's doing pretty well. It's getting a lot of fruit. This will turn a really beautiful kind of peachy color. These peppers are so sweet but so spicy, but they make amazing hot sauce. I have 1 and 2 Mad Hatter peppers growing. These are the only sweet pepper that I like, and it's unfortunate because neither of these plants are doing that well. This one, I'm not sure if it has a curly top virus, or it's possible that I might have had some herbicide that was sprayed in a neighbor's yard that drifted over. It's still growing, it's still putting out blossoms. I'm hoping it recovers. But they grow these really unique shaped fruit, and they will ripen in orange and then turn to a really beautiful red. And they're sweet, but they have kind of a citrusy note to them, which is why I think these are my favorite. This other one is just a little stunted. I think probably because I had this big cosmos next to it. So once I get this taken down, I'm hoping it will take off. I also have a cayenne pepper growing, a jalapeno. This variety is called Jalapeno M. And I have a sweet banana pepper growing as well. This is my main potato bed, and although the plants look really rough, they're doing exactly what they're supposed to do. These are all early season varieties, so when the vines die back, it just means that they are ready to be harvested, so I'll be doing that later this week. I planted 3 varieties this year: Red Norland, Purple Viking, and Prairie Blush, so be sure to look for my potato growing guide that I'll have out later this year. This is my largest raised bed. It's another bed in transition. I've been harvesting from this bed a lot, and we'll be planting a lot more in it over the next few weeks. I have 2 different kinds of zucchini growing. This first one was supposed to be Black Forest zucchini. My father gave it to me, but it ended up growing this sort of white colored zucchini. I guess maybe light green, but it's really good, whatever it is, and it's actually been a really healthy plant. This next one is called 8-ball zucchini, obviously for its shape, because it does grow round zucchini. This is a new variety for me this year. It's been really fun to grow, and it's kind of nice if you just want a little bit of zucchini. I have some German chamomile growing. I love using this as a companion plant. The pollinators love it, and I also use it to make my own chamomile tea. On this cattle panel trellis, I have yard-long beans growing. I love these beans. They're an Asian style bean, and they kind of taste to me like a cross between asparagus and green beans. They grow these really long beans, hence the name yard-long beans, although you want to pick them before they get anywhere near that length, but they're really fun to grow on a trellis because they sort of hang down. On this side of that large bed, I have my favorite heirloom tomato. These are German striped tomatoes. I do have a few that are starting to ripen up. In fact, I think I can go ahead and take this one, but these get pretty big. And on this front trellis, I have some Market More 76 cucumbers, and unfortunately, this is just more evidence of those cucumber beetles that I've been dealing with. Lots of damage. I did have 3 or 4 planted along this trellis. I had to pull 2 of them due to bacterial wilt. I am still getting some harvest off of them, but again, such a shame. Just a huge issue with those pests this year. In this bed, I have parsnips, and these are the longest growing vegetable in my garden. They are planted usually 1st of April, and I don't harvest them until after first frost. In the corners, I just have some onions planted. In fact, you'll probably see onions just kind of randomly planted all around my garden. I do this as a companion plant. Their strong smells can help deter some pests. It's not foolproof, but sometimes I just grow a lot of onions and I need extra space. I'm growing sweet potatoes in 30-gallon grow bags. So I have 2 here and 1 on the other side of my garden. And once these really start to vine and take off, I'll grow them up along this fence line. They get these really pretty purple flowers, so they make a really pretty backdrop to the garden. But I have 3 varieties this year. I have Bayou Belle, Beauregard, and Purple Majesty. This is another raised bed sort of in the transition, but you can see that watering grid that I was talking about earlier on this existing raised bed. So they're really great to place on wooden raised beds as well. But I do have some bush beans growing in this. I have some dragon tongue beans. I did have some spotty germination. It could very easily have been birds or squirrels that got to them, so I did just replant some. And on this end, they haven't come up yet, but I have some mascot beans. It's just a really classic bush bean, really great for canning. Again, you can see some of those onions planted on the side. More of those dwarf cosmos. I have a ruby ball cabbage still left over from fall. It's just hanging on, but I really do need to get it harvested. And then I have some dwarf marigolds. These are called either Queen Anne or Queen Margaret. I think it's Queen Anne. No, Queen Margaret. I don't know. I always get the name of these mixed up, but they're a really great dwarf variety to grow. Everyone say hello to Sasha, our resident garden fairy. She does have a little seatbelt because she doesn't like to stay put. In this bed, I have 4 varieties of dahlias planted. 3 of these came in a variety pack, so I honestly have no idea what kind they are. But one of them has these beautiful kind of purple blossoms. This one I call my Barbie dahlia. It gets these really feathery, are these called cactus dahlias, I think? Really beautiful pink feathery blossoms. This one has these really pretty white blossoms tinged with pink, but I just noticed this today. Do you see all of these ants on this dahlia? I have never had this issue before on dahlias, but it's because they are absolutely covered in aphids. So this guy is going to get a nice bath tonight. This is the only one I have an actual name for. It's either Stolzbom Berlin or Stolzbom Berlin. A friend gave me this one, but they are really beautiful, kind of miniature little blossoms. I did experiment with planting some cantaloupe a little bit later in the season. I'm hoping I can kind of miss the window when those cucumber beetles are really active, but this will get really close to my first frost time, so we'll see how it goes. This bed is for perennial herbs, so I have some chives, some oregano, and some thyme. I just did a huge prune on this oregano and thyme. They were so overgrown. The oregano is already growing back like crazy because that's what oregano does. I took off about 2/3 of this thyme plant. It was really just woody and overgrown. I did leave some on so it could kind of regenerate some of that energy, but it is starting to put out a lot more tender young growth. This is another sort of mixed bed, lots of different things growing, which is how I like to garden. In the front, I have some extra, it's either tannate or tannat onions. I think it's tannate onions. This is a red onion. Again, more of those dwarf cosmos that are going to seed. I have some Patterson onions planted along the front. The tops are starting to flop over, so they should be ready for harvest pretty soon. That's a volunteer cosmos growing out of the rocks. Several kinds of tomatoes growing. I have a Korean long, 2 berries, crazy cherries, a couple dark star. I have 2 orange accordion tomatoes, more of that chamomile growing in between, and an ananas noir is I think how you say that. This is a white eggplant, and this poor little thing has just been through the ringer so far this year. First it had a giant hornworm, which is why half the leaves are missing, and now flea beetles have found it, which I know that eggplant is a favorite of flea beetles. I may add some diatomaceous earth just to help it out. Honestly though, a lot of times I wait and see how the plant does because a lot of them can handle mild to moderate pest damage. This is another new to me plant this year. This is a Martin House gourd, and it grows these really cool shaped gourds that you can use to make houses for martins. I've had a lot of issue though with these gourds rotting. I'm not sure if they're not getting fully pollinated or they're getting something like a blossom end rot. Again, this is first time for me. I do have some that look promising, but so far I haven't really been able to get mature fruit on this plant. So if you have successfully grown Martin House gourds before, let me know your tips. This is another bed that I'm transitioning from summer to fall plants, which is why I have a lot of bare spots. But on this side, again, 2 more of those eggplants that are really just getting a beating from flea beetles this year. More dwarf cosmos that are dropping tons of seedlings. And then I have a few extra tomatoes that I just needed to find room for. So I had some San Marzano, and I also had, let me see, some Mountain Fresh Determinate. These are really similar to those Red Deuce tomatoes, just a very kind of classic red slicing variety. These were a fun little surprise. These were volunteer zinnias. I grew zinnias in this bed last year. Obviously some seed fell onto the rocks. I'm assuming these are Oklahoma pinks. They look really similar, but look how cute these blossoms are. These 2 cucumbers may be my only chance for pickling cucumbers this year. These are Excelsior cucumbers, and they're parthenocarpic, which means they don't need to be pollinated in order to produce that fruit. So in order to hopefully keep the cucumber beetles off of them, I'm going to be covering them with row covers really soon. This is my main onion bed, and as you can see, they are almost ready to be harvested, at least this middle variety. So I have blush onions. These are a really cool hybrid between a red and a yellow onion. So if you think that red onions are just too strong, try these, but they're this really beautiful kind of purple color. I have candy onions in the middle. These are probably ready to come out maybe within the next week. I'm just waiting for these tops to dry up just a little bit more. And these red onions over here are tannate onions. This is my second metal raised bed. I am so happy with this bed. It's really, really doing well. I have 2 fingerling potatoes planted in each corner. These are a late season variety, so they won't be ready for probably at least another month. More of those parade bunching onions in the middle, 2 Gerber daisies in the front. I'm really excited for these to bloom. I have 3 of these tiny Tom tomatoes, and they are a true dwarf tomato. I mean, this is not even a foot high. But they have tons of blossoms on them. The fruit, at least on the picture, looks similar to a cherry tomato for me. So if you have a really small space or you're growing them in a container, this might be a really good option for you. And last in this container, I have Rainbow Candy Crush Kale. I have had them covered to keep the cabbage whites off of them. It's technically an ornamental variety. It has a really pretty kind of purplish center, and the leaves are edible. They're a little bit thicker, well, actually a lot thicker than regular kale, but these are really good for making kale chips. They don't get quite as crumbly as regular kale. Thanks so much for joining me today. My channel mainly focuses on educating beginner gardeners, so these garden tours are always a really fun break. Check the description box below for a link and discount code to those Garden in Minutes metal raised beds and watering grids. There's also links to my other social media channels where I post short, easy to follow videos aimed at helping beginner gardeners. Until then, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.